Hello, I'm Sav Jonza, and welcome to APTN National News Weekend. 5 RCMP officers in Prince George, BC are facing charges following the in-custody death of Dale Culver, a member of the Gitxsan and Wet'suwet'en nations. Culver died while detained by police in July of 2017. His case was profiled by Lee Wilson in a 2017 APTN Investigates episode. 2 officers face manslaughter charges, and 3 are alleged to have attempted to obstruct justice following the arrest. In a written release, Culver's family says it has taken too long for the charges to be laid. His Aunt Virginia Pierre wrote, in part, "We cannot shake off the devastation until justice is done. We hurt each time we see police-involved deaths in the news. It happens way too much. Too many have died in the hands of the RCMP." As they prepare for court proceedings, the family is planning to speak directly with the media in the coming weeks. It's a tragedy all too familiar on remote First Nations, a house fire ending in death. But a recent one that had happened on a remote Cree nation in Northern Ontario was brought to the floor of the House of Commons. Here's Annette Francis.
It's the first week for members of Parliament to return to work, and once again calls for help in another community rang out in the House of Commons.
The Wabano family of Peawanuck lost a beautiful child in a house fire this weekend, and we mourn with them and grieve with the 10 people who have been left homeless. In 2021, I wrote to this minister warning about the lack of fire protection for the Winis Cree. That warning was ignored, and now a child is dead. It is unconscionable that any community in this country is left without basic fire protection. So to the minister, simple question. Will she stand today and promise to commit to build a fire hall and give the emergency resource support for the people of Peawanuck so they can live in safety?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the member. Mr. Speaker, my deepest condolences to the family and the entire community for the loss of a young girl due to a fire incident in Peawanuck. Minister Haidu spoke with Chief Hunter on Sunday to express her condolences and confirm that Indigenous services will be able to coordinate supports for this particular community. We will provide more updates as more information can be confirmed, and ISCO officials continue their discussions with the community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
According to a 2021 Statistics Canada report, First Nations people living on reserve are 10 times more likely to die by fire. Often that can be attributed to lack of fire safety standards, firefighting services, and substandard housing. The Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief Cindy Woodhouse sends her condolences to the families affected. But she says it's time the federal government step up.
We've always told the Government of Canada that we need to close the infrastructure gap by 2030. This is so important. We need to make sure that there's more investments into housing and to make sure that people have adequate housing and to make sure that that communities are given the resources to develop fire protection.
According to Woodhouse, AFN created a First Nations fire protection strategy, but are still waiting for a response from the federal government. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
BC's bid to decriminalize small amounts of drugs in an effort to curb the deadly opioid crisis has just been given the green light. Here's Tina House with more.
BC has just recorded its second deadliest year in history, with the record 2,272 deaths from toxic drugs in 2022. And now, both the federal and provincial government are taking a bold new step to help save lives.
As we all know, there is no recovery for someone who is dead. Last May, I announced that our government had approved an exemption request from the province of British Columbia so that adults 18 years and over in the province found in the personal possession of up to 2.5 grams of certain illegal drugs for personal use would not be arrested, criminally charged, or have their drugs seized.
With Indigenous people dying at over 5 times the rate of other BC residents, there is hope that decriminalizing these small amounts will allow officers to assist in other ways rather than arresting people.
We recognize that much more work still needs to be done to address the magnitude of the toxic drug crisis and its impact on communities. We look forward to working with our partners on additional measures to combat the toxic drug crisis, including access to safe supply and better connecting people who use drugs with social, health, and treatment services.
Instead of being treated as criminals, they will be treated with care and compassion. Decriminalizing people who use drugs is a critical step in tackling the toxic drug crisis. It will help break down stigma, the fear and shame around substance use that prevents so many people from reaching out for life-saving supports. Because substance use is a public health matter, not a criminal justice one.
This pilot project is welcomed by Dylan Dempsey, an admitted drug user.
I think that's a good thing because a lot of users have their own personal stash on them from point A to point B kind of thing. So if they were to get stopped by the cops, it's a good thing for them, you know? They shouldn't be getting harassed under such a small amount.
But for Raya Roberts, she believes it gives an opening for more dealers to sell more toxic drugs.
We get people who don't know what they're doing, who don't know how to make drugs, creating odd cocktails of, and I think we've seen this, right, over the years. Now we're seeing, you know, possibly an influx of tranquilizer dope, right? Tranquilizers in dope, right? I mean, I can see things like that getting worse, actually.
Trey Helton works at the Overdose Prevention Society and says street drugs are even more toxic now more than ever.
The regular used to be like a caffeine, mannitol buffing agent in the drugs with a 5% fentanyl ratio, and the new norm now is around a 25 to 35% fentanyl ratio, which is extremely strong. Combining the fact that people are mixing benzos in there, it's a 50-50 shot whether you're going to get fentanyl with benzos or just plain old fentanyl. But the reality is that the fentanyl is even stronger now because people have built up a tolerance to it. So,
starting January the 31st, it will no longer be illegal to carry 2.5 grams in a bid by the BC government to stop the shame and stigma for drug users. But with the toxicity levels increasing, will that help the situation? Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
A Native American actor known for his role in Dancing with Wolves was taken into custody in Las Vegas earlier this week. Nathan Chasing Horse, known for his role as Smiles a Lot in the Oscar-winning movie, is facing several serious charges, including sexual assault and trafficking. Tsuut'ina Nation police were also involved in the case. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police released this photo of Chasing Horse. They say the 46-year-old is facing charges of sexual assault of a child less than 16 years old. Chasing Horse is also facing 2 counts of sex trafficking of an adult and child abuse neglect. In a press release, Tsuut'ina Nation Police said, "We are currently working with our policing partners here in Alberta, including the Calgary Police Service, as we believe there may be other victims that may want to come forward. We are further reviewing all related historical sexual assault files and working with a dedicated Crown prosecutor to ensure all victims have a voice." Time for a short break, but still to come, why a stretch of highway in the Yukon has people worried for caribou in the region. Welcome back. The feds are ready to make the James Bay lithium mine part of Canada's critical minerals strategy to domestically produce minerals needed for electrical vehicles. But some Cree community members are concerned about how the mine will transform their traditional territory. Amelia Fournier has more.
The vast territory of Iuichi has provided for the Cree since time immemorial. But now there's a new source of wealth located underneath the ground.
I have mixed feelings. Yes, I see the potential of economy for this mine, but I also see the downside, what I'm going to lose, my lifestyle, our tradition.
The James Bay lithium mine will cut through Tallyman Brian Wapanakapo's trapline in the ancestral territory of the Cree of Eastmain in northern Quebec. It has been approved by the federal government, but that doesn't mean it's a done deal yet. The mine, proposed by the company Alchem Galaxy Resources Limited, hasn't received approval from Quebec. Before that happens, an independent environmental review body has to hold public hearings in affected communities. On January 24th, Wapanakapo outlined his concerns for hunters.
This area where the mining project is going to be is one of our prime and key hunting areas. It's going to be affected.
Wapanakapo wants to see more income security for hunters so they can get more equipment to continue their lifestyle.
Every time there's a project happening around the area, for example, the hydro, the mining, the hunters are the ones who are most affected, and they're the least taken care of.
The Cree from East Main at the public hearings asked several questions about how their community will be taken care of by the mining companies.
I'd like to have a history lesson for Alchem. Is he a successful company? How many successful projects he had? Is there a storyline? Has he messed up his projects? I'd like to know.
Consultations and studies in collaboration with the Cree Nation have been underway for the past 5 years, says Denis Couture, head of Alchem Galaxy Canadian operations. Couture said the mine will bring jobs and revenue to the Cree of Iuichi, but lithium mines can pose health and environmental risks. Concerns voiced at the public hearing echoed those of Ernie Moses, a tallyman whose trapline will be destroyed by the neighboring upcoming Rose lithium mine. At the public hearing on January 24th, he said he didn't fully support the James Bay lithium mine and wants to make sure community oversees the project. Couture promised that the company will continue the environmental and health monitoring process alongside trappers and the Cree Health Board.
Rehabilitation money need to close, they will be put on the side right at the construction at beginning of operation. So if something happened year 5, year 10, year 15 after, the money will be parked in a bank account and we cannot do anything with this outcome. Even we go bankrupt, we cannot take that money. So the government will take that money and do the work.
But Charles Isao, a cultural teacher with the Cree Health Board, said it's too early to tell what will be the long-term impacts.
Tailings and all that stuff that get into the water systems, and once it starts to get into that system, then I'd have a concern. I'd be really concerned about the plant life, the animal life, everything that we have in our indigenous life.
Crees have until February 27th to send questions and concerns to this email. Emilia Fournier, APTN National News, Montreal.
Woodland caribou are a common sight along the Alaska Highway in southern Yukon. And while numbers of the Southern Lakes herd are on the rebound, some people say a stretch of highway in the territory's Southern Lakes region is becoming a major hazard for the herd. As Sarah Connors tells us, those concerned for the caribou are asking motorists to drive smart and to slow down.
Oh, these are just the caribou tracks, you know, and...
Don Taves is the chair of the Carcross-Tagish Renewable Resources Council. He's pointing out some tracks that likely belong to the Carcross caribou herd, one of 3 herds in Yukon's Southern Lakes region. He says conservation efforts have helped the herd increase from 300 animals in the 1990s to around 1,500 today. But now the herd has another threat. Vehicles traveling on the Alaska Highway.
Because we now have 1,500 caribou, 12 or 1,500, you know, we have vehicle collisions that we didn't have before.
So far this winter, 7 caribou have been killed in road collisions along the Alaska Highway. 5 of those collisions occurred in this 15-mile stretch between Judas Creek and Jake's Corner. While those numbers are typical, the Carcross-Tagish Council is worried that too many caribou are being lost to collisions.
70% of the caribou that are killed are pregnant cows, you know, in January, February, and March. So it's a huge loss. It's a double loss, actually. It's more than one animal.
This stretch of highway has some of the best habitat for caribou and crosses paths with the herd's winter range. The herd can also be hard to spot during January's limited daylight hours. Taves says big trucks like these can be especially devastating.
Very often it's a herd of caribou in front of it. So they don't hit one animal, they hit 3 or 4 or 5.
Citizens of Carcross-Tagish First Nation are also concerned about the collisions.
Because no matter how much signage you put up, it doesn't seem to be working. They've been there for many years.
Edna Helm says it's not just caribou that are being hit by vehicles.
Just the other day, there was a yearling moose got killed, and then the mother standing on the side of the road looking.
She's also concerned drivers are not reporting collisions.
Nobody reported it. Nobody reports a lot of these things, so I think there might be a lot more hit because they can go off the side of the road and you won't find them.
The herd, the range extends into that area.
Taves says the council, along with the territorial departments of Environment and Highways and Public Works, are working to warn drivers. That includes installing lighted signs and clearing vegetation along the highway so motorists can spot caribou before it's too late.
So you really have to be aware and slow down and drive smart, especially through this stretch of the Carcross caribou herd winter range.
Since the highway is here to stay, Taves says the recovering caribou population depends on drivers being cautious. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Marsh Lake.
Time to step aside one final time, but when we come back, a look at the importance of the Arctic Winter Games to remote communities. The Algonquin assassin and former NHL enforcer Gino Odjick was laid to rest in his home community of Kitigan-Zibi in Quebec last week. Family took time to speak with media before the private service. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
Family and friends have come to the Kitigan-Zibi Cultural Center to address media. They're here to share some stories about who Gino Odjick was.
The old saying goes, you should never meet your heroes. In the case of our late friend Gino, that couldn't be farther from the truth. If Gino wasn't your hero before you met him, he certainly was afterwards. You see, it was Gino's toughness and his skill that made him famous. However, it was his huge heart and generosity that kept him in the public eye.
Odjick was born and raised in Kitigan-Zibi. He was the only boy in a family of 6 kids. His younger sister, Janique Odjick, says they were close.
He was very coddled by the sisters. We were extremely protective of him growing up. Even though he had his own and he was really good in hockey and he did these different things, the sisters, we just kind of coddled him.
Odjick had 12 seasons as an enforcer for 4 NHL teams, including the Vancouver Canucks and Montreal Canadiens. 9 years ago, Odjick was diagnosed with a rare disease that affected his heart. He passed away on January 15th.
I was shocked. We knew it was coming eventually. We didn't think it would be that soon, but the way I choose to look at it is after the first bout he had with that disease, we got an extra 9 years with him, and I count us very fortunate for that.
9-year-old Sebastian Mawadi is Odjick's grandson. Although he was too young to watch Papa Gino play in person, he's seen the highlights.
He was a protector of lots of people. Whenever the other teams picked on one of his guys, he always attacked.
But what he will miss most about Papa Gino?
His kindness, generosity. He was unlike any other person I ever met.
Janique says her brother was unbelievable, a kid from the res that accomplished many things in his 52 years.
From meeting the Pope, Bryan Adams, and Bryan Adams loved Gino, and next thing you know, we look and Gino's on stage singing with Bryan Adams, sitting with George Jones, jamming out, like all of these things. He went to Japan, China, Switzerland, all over the world. He had that opportunity and he touched so many people. So when you look at that, it kind of makes you go, wow, he lived such a full life. According to
Odjick's family, a celebration of life will be held at a later date, and there are discussions about creating a memorial to honor his legacy. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Kitigan-Zibi, Quebec.
The Arctic Winter Games host nearly 2,000 athletes, youth ambassadors, and cultural delegates. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs takes a look at what the Games mean for remote regions.
Not a lot of people know about Inuit Games, so
even just for us to represent and have a team, it feels like we have a purpose to be here.
While it takes tremendous athleticism to compete in the Arctic Winter Games, 19-year-old Naya Pierce of Qaluit knows it takes just as much mental endurance.
You have to be very concentrated and have a lot of confidence in yourself, because any games is like a lot of mind games.
Roughly 2,000 athletes, youth ambassadors, cultural delegates, and coaches are here from north of the 55th parallel.
The first time I stepped in here, I was super nervous. Mostly because I'm the only girl and on my team, so I was really, really nervous, in meeting new people.
For many, they're far from home, competing in their first international competition. The Games are a way for Northern athletes to compete at such a high level, when traveling for training and competitions is so expensive.
We are tremendously proud to support these Arctic Winter Games and play an integral role as a host for what is going to be an exceptional week.
Councillor Kendrick Cardinal says the 2023 Games have been supporting rural Indigenous communities within the municipality of Wood Buffalo.
I think that the Arctic Winter Games 2023 in Fort McMurray being held here will showcase and show and I guess inspire other young youth that are, struggling and possibly just, they don't have the facility to do it.
The Games are known as the Olympics of the North, and it's important that the care and comfort of all is taken back to communities after the Games.
Who are role models and leaders within their communities, it's really important for them to feel confident in their own abilities and their own knowledge about mental health so that they can better support their participants.
Evelyn Anderson is with the Coaching Association of Canada. They've chosen Arctic Winter Games as the first event to launch mental health resource packages. This includes infographics, training modules, and activities coaches can do with their teams.
With the support of this funding, we were able to translate that module into 7 additional languages, including Inuktitut, Dene, and Cree. So now coaches can take that mental health and sport e-learning module for free.
How can athletes take care of themselves while under pressure? Pierce says it's all about community and connection.
I know there's different teams, but at the end of the game, everybody helps each other in different ways, and each team gives this advice for everything, and try to give pointers so you can do your best in it.
Charlotte Mort Jacobs, APTN National News, Fort McMurray, Treaty 8 Territory.
The teamwork that goes into these games is amazing, and it's great seeing them back in action. Well, that's all that we have for you today. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great weekend.